Hey guys, welcome back. It's Biggs. Now, thanks for stopping by again. I'm really appreciating all the support you guys are giving me, all the subscriptions and everything like that. I'm really feeling love, so I'm wearing my shirt. All about love today. That's for you guys. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm just actually, the Xenotoca that are in this tank, this weird Mexican live bear that's critically endangered, almost extinct in the wild, is Xenotoca lion's eye tamazula. And this species, because it's such a critically endangered species, I'm growing it. It's a cold water species, so it does very well, or cooler water species, in an unheated planted tank, and it's thriving in here. So what I'm doing is I'm actually catching some of the babies out, and then I'm going to put them into the hatchery in the other room, and getting ready for our Breeders' Award program, which starts again in September, which is coming up, so I can enter those fish into my local Breeders' Award program, also known as B.A.P. I love these little boxes. These little boxes, these breeder traps. This one happens to be from Marina. Absolutely love these things. There's so many different options of things that you can do with them. You know, you can use them as a if you're breeding plecos or cories and you want to keep the same water and everything, you can transfer the egg or the spawn into here, run a little tiny tube with an air stone and everything like that. If you're catching fry, which is what I generally use them for, I usually use them for catching because they're easy to work with. I can often sex the fish out. They have little dividers that you can put into them, and the little dividers are good because if you're sexing, say, an African cichlid or something very obviously sexually dimorphic, you can keep the boys and the girls. Say you want to get a reverse trio or 2 males and 4 females for before you bag them up, you can keep them all separated and it's easy to work with. I absolutely love these little units, and they're available almost everywhere. They just call them breeder boxes. I think they're awesome. So, but on the topic of Breeders' Award programs, when I was catching these fish, I started thinking about it. You know, maybe that's something we should talk about. Now, I'm actually a long core member. I'm one of the original founding members of the Aquarium Society of Winnipeg, and that's, you know, where I used to live, and that's only about half an hour from where I live now. Now, I was one of the founding members. This is back in about 86, 87 when we restarted the club up again. There hadn't been a club in Winnipeg since the 70s. So we started it up, and there was a core group of about 8 of us, and we had some fun. And the thing that fell onto my plate was the B.A.P program, the Breeders' Award program. And that was my passion, was breeding fish, and it still very much is today. And the diversity of fish that are available today is crazy, so I absolutely love it. But when I created the Breeders' Award program, it wasn't something that was just my idea. I went and saw a bunch of Breeders' Award programs from clubs all over North America and stuff, and kind of picked and chose and saw the things. A lot of them have a lot of similarities. And if you guys have a local club that you're involved with, if you got things that are a little bit different, or things they think are a little bit weird, or things they think are really cool and unique, I'd love to see them in the comments and stuff like that, because we're always trying to find ways and means to develop these programs to do the best they can. Now, the main objective of a Breeders' Award program, in my opinion, should be that it should basically be to encourage your membership to breed fish and then foster that knowledge and share that knowledge with the rest of the membership. Because you're seeing on Facebooks and stuff like that, and a lot of the social media pages are cracking down on animal sales. The level of fish available in some of the pet stores, especially in Canada, is in massive decline. A lot of the stores are shutting down or closing or making their fish departments a lot smaller. It seems they seem to be chasing after that Walmart customer, and Walmart doesn't keep fish. And to me, that's just backwards. I don't understand that. So a large facet of our hobby tends to be slowly kind of going underground. In Canada, we have a thriving market for tropical fish. There's some excellent wholesalers. My good friend Spencer Jack, who owns the Aficionados, which is just outside of Winnipeg, he ships fish right across Canada constantly. The fish are available. The diversity is available there. It's up to us, the passionate hobbyists, to keep that ball rolling. Now, the challenges with Breeders' Award programs, to me, is they often become almost a contest. And the contest shouldn't be a contest against other members, which is what more than often happens. Now, if you have a hardcore group of people in your club, you got 5, 6, 8, 10 people in your club, and they're all the hardcore breeders in their club, and having that friendly battle going back and forth and stuff, that's really cool, and that's often fun, because we had that in Winnipeg years and years ago at the beginning, and it was we just had fun every month going back and forth, seeing who was doing what and stuff. But we also worked together and helped each other, so it was all in good fun, and we were all sharing, we were learning. When it starts becoming more of a contest just to see who can do more and more, that's not really what I call the heart and soul of these programs. These programs should be about the fish and about your personal growth. So these programs should be designed to award or provide merit for you, the breeder, who is accomplished in breeding a said species. Because really, our involvement, I ain't putting nothing in the tank part of my body other than catching fish that's affecting breeding. It's not up to me, it's up to the fish. Our goal, as I've mentioned in some of our spawning technique videos, our goal is just to figure out the pieces of the puzzle, put them together in a way that those fish are comfortable, that they will replicate or reproduce in your environments that you've provided for them. We can control water chemistry, we can control water temperature, we control entirely the dietary factors of what we can provide for the fish. Every one of those things is completely within our control. We can also control not only the size of the aquariums, but also the landscaping or decorations of that tank to make sure that all those needs are met as well. Some species are extremely reclusive and maybe they only come out at night, so then we want to have lots of shelter and dimly lit, and some species may need a leaf of a plant to spawn on, and we have to provide that. If we don't, they may never breed in captivity. So doing that research as a hobbyist, spending a lot of time online, reading lots of articles, getting more and more opinions about how people have been successful, that's all how we grow. Now, our program, the one that we have in Winnipeg, has evolved and changed over the years. There's certain aspects of some of the changes I absolutely love and I applaud. There's some that I'm not the biggest fan of, but it doesn't matter. You got to remember, this isn't about an individual, this is about a group. So everything that an organization such as an aquarium society does should always be, first and foremost, for the betterment of the organization and the group of people, never for the individual. I've seen it too often in organizations, other clubs all over North America, where you'll get someone into our Breeders' Award program type chairperson, and they all of a sudden start changing the classifications of different fish and changing the rules to better them. And that's, to me, is, again, it completely negates the program. With my B.A.P program, for me to register my species, the Xenotoca lyonzi tamazula, for me to actually get eligible for Breeders' Award program, I have to have a minimum of 5 fry. They have to be a minimum of 60 days old, which these ones are clearly not. These ones are still very undersized. These are maybe 3 weeks old, so they're going to be transferred into the hatchery, and then they're going to grow up a little bit, and then they'll be able to take them in September when I'm there at the meeting, if I'm in town. So they have to be a minimum of 60 days old. I have to take them to the meeting, those 5 fry. It could be more than 5, but 5 fry. And I have to actually put them into the Breeders' Award program auction. Now that auction actually precedes the normal monthly auction, so everybody that attends that meeting at least has first chance at getting that fish. It may only ever appear there once. And yes, back in the day when I bred zebra plecos, I had to take 5 zebra plecos to the auction, and yes, they did sell at the auction. When I've done stingrays went to the auction. It doesn't matter. And all I'm getting is I'm literally getting a point factor, and I'm getting the dollar value out of what I sell, but I'm getting that point factor, and I'm getting a little chick in my column. It just keeps adding up in my list. Now, what else do we have to have? All that verification has to take place at the monthly meeting, which is really, really cool. And everything's at the discretion of the Breeders' Award Program Chair. You can provide documentation if you think something's unfair or wrong, and you can challenge that, and that's really cool. I think that's good. It's nice and democratic, and as long as you have information to back it up. Now, I see too often as well, not necessarily in aquarium societies, but online. I remember back in the day when you used to get your Tropical Fish Hobbyist magazine in the mail, and you'd go to that section just before the internet, and you go to that section where people would write in letters. And I used to love that section because invariably almost every single month somebody would write in, and for some reason Tropical Fish Hobbyists thought this would be a great idea to just keep publishing the same rhetoric again and again. And the question or the query would be something along the lines, I just bought a fish called a convict cichlid, and I've looked everywhere for information on them, and I've read all the books, and I can't find any information about convict cichlids. And then they does nice big diatribe about convict cichlids, and they feel all good, and they pat themselves on the back and everything. Like, come on, really? Did you even try? Now, our B.A.P program has a class system, okay? And our class system, and this is one of the things that I've never been a real fan of. But remember, I told you, I was the one that developed the original program, and it was exactly the same type of system. So as I've grown over the years, I've kind of changed my values and my opinions on how the program works. But that's just that it's my opinion and my opinion only. If you share that opinion, that's great, but this is just my opinion. I'm not by any means trying to persuade anyone to change anything, because the program has worked very, very well for me over the years. Now, our class system works on A, B, C, and D. A being 5, B being 10, so forth and so forth. But we also now have a new class called E-class, and E-class is 25 points. Ooh, never had that before. The only way you got bonus points before over and above your class was if you wrote an article for the newsletter, which our club no longer does, and most clubs really honestly don't put out a newsletter to great extent anymore. Or you did a presentation on the breeding of that fish at the local monthly meeting. And again, that could be problematic as well, because every month you could have to fit in a schedule for Johnny to come in and do his presentation on how he bred his guppy or how he bred his crib or something like that. And sometimes those presentations are awesome, and I'm not discouraging them by any means, but sometimes they're just not. So whatever. Now, the class system being 5, 10, 15, and 20 points breaks down as such. So really, really easy species should be obviously an A. And then a B species might be something that you have to have some sort of actual involvement with in regards to how that species breeds or does. And then C and then D. And then just as the points get higher, the involvement from you gets harder, or the more challenging to breed that species gets higher. Now, in the case of the Xenotoca here, they are only considered an A-class species. Now, to be an A-class species, that means they require really no involvement. A-class species as well would be, for example, and I'm just using ours as an example, it's definitely not a critique or anything. Under anabantoids, paradise fish. That's probably the easiest of all the anabantoids to breed. Cooler water, eats almost anything, it's readily bred. It was actually the very, very first tropical fish ever kept in captivity. Some of the barbs, you've got several of the different danios, you've got cherry barbs, that's about it. You've got mountain minnows, white cloud mountain minnows. Believe it or not, white cloud mountain minnows, the regular species, is actually an illegal species or prohibited species in my province. Because I'm sure you can just imagine the detriment this fish would have in the wild. Have you seen the native fish from here? We got giant pike and muskie and walleye and bass and all these massive predators. I can just imagine the threat the white cloud's going to have when it gets released into the wild by accident. Definitely not encouraging anyone to release anything into the wild. Very, very strongly discourage anyone to ever do that anywhere in the world. But abolishing or prohibiting the white cloud mountain, come on guys, let's do some research first. Under Rift Lake cichlids, you only have a couple of the very common Lake Victorians. Under New World, which is most of Central and South America, you just have a few of them. So some of your convict type cichlids, some of your basic cyclosomines like your port cichlids and stuff, some of your basic aquidins from South America, Geophagus brasiliensis, the rainbow cichlid Hirostilapia multispinosa, the regular Texas, and just a couple others in there, fire mouse, so some very, very basic ones. Under other cichlids, we have jewel cichlids, some of the basic ones that are not listed necessarily elsewhere. So some of them are listed on our program based on a species. If that species of Therichthes, being the firemouth, is the easiest one to breed, personally, I think they're almost all exactly the same to breed. I don't find them any really different. Some take a little bit longer to mature, like perhaps Passionis or some of the other ones, before they're going to breed. But you got to make the program as general and all-encompassing, because you got to assume that 90% of your membership is not dealing in wild-caught stock or first generation from wild that has all that inherent violence that sometimes comes with it being a cichlid. And their stock might just be coming from either the local auction, or it might be coming from one of the local pet stores. And local pet store fish, if you're dealing with something like a convict or a firemouth, yeah, they're pretty simple to breed. They've been in the trade a long time, and they're very, very easy to do. Some of the basic freshwater shrimps of Neocaridina are on here, ghost shrimp. They have some different snails. But when it comes down to the section of live bears, it's all live bears not listed elsewhere. So that's going to be your guppies, your swords, your platies, all that sort of stuff. And then if you go into Class B, which is 10 points, I'm doing that twice for you. 5 and 5. That's 10 for those that can't count, because my other hand was tied up. Okay? But in live bears under B, we have listed by genera. So Ameca, Brachyraphis, Caracodon, Gadaeid, Heterandia, Iliodon, Genencia, Limnia, and Pelichthes. So I'm thinking a lot of those are Gadaeids. Now I find it a little bit odd, in my opinion, and that's all my opinion is, that Xenotoca does not appear in that list. Because Xenotoca get big, mine are still little, even my adults are still young, but they get to be like 4 inches. And they are hell on wheels, even if you kept them in a tank with some really aggressive Central American cichlids. These are really, really aggressive compared to a swordtail or a platy or a molly or that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of surprised that they don't fall in B, but it doesn't matter to me. You follow the rules of the program, and that's what it is. Unless I can provide a bunch of documentation to prove that this species really should be placed higher, and then they could discuss it and then maybe elevate it. But is it worth the trouble? No, I think it's fair. I think it's fair and it's general and it's nice for everybody. However, because my species is critically endangered or facing extinction, and I could provide documentation of that, we actually have that Class E. And Class E is actually, instead of 5 points for an A, this species here would qualify for 25 points. That's 5 of these. So, but to provide documentation, that species has to be listed either with the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, and they have the website, or the CARES program, which is Conservation, Awareness, Recognition, Encouragement, and Support Preservation Program Priority List. And this priority list is actually put together by experts in each one of these fields. So if you're into cichlids, Paul Loisel is very, very much involved in putting what species belong on this preservation list. If you're into live bears, I don't know who the guy is or girl, but these are real experts that are very, very involved in the scientific community and understand the threat that these species face, so they've helped build this list. Is the list perfect? Probably not. Can the list be changed and modified? Yes. Should it be changed? It should be constantly changing. I'll give you an example. Therichthyes mekai, which is the common firemouth. Okay? Sounds pretty common, right? It's available anywhere in the pet trade, the regular one. However, the Therichthyes mekai from the Rio Suban, about a few years ago, had a massive poisoning, environmental poisoning of their environment, and it killed the river, killed the entire river. That species is wiped off, that variant of the species is almost completely wiped off the face of the planet. That area is starting to come back now, but it'll be decades before that environment will really be sustainable and something will evolve back into it. But that species is actually very, very, and even that variant is kept within captivity. So now that role falls solely on us as aquarists to maintain it. We as humans destroyed their habitat. I'm not saying you did, I didn't, but humankind did. So our roles, I know we didn't do it, but we're going to try and do our best to maintain those species in captivity. So if you do have a tank and you can dedicate an aquarium to a CARES fish or a threatened species of whatever flavor or whatever interest that you may have, live bear, killifish, cichlid, catfish, it doesn't matter. You're finding a way to contribute and help and save those species in the hobby. I kept a species for years, which is one of the 2 species of live bears listed. There's only 2 species of live bears listed within these sheets, but I'm sure I could go on that program now and there'd be a whole bunch that have been added to it for proper reasons. But as the list stands right now, there's only 2. Ameca splendens, which are the big live bears I have in the 160, and I'll show you a little video of them, and we're going to talk about them in a later video down the road. But I have a nice big group of them. They're listed here. And the other one is Zophophorus cuccianus. Now I kept that fish, cuccianus, for many, many years. It's a Zophophorus, so it means it's considered a swordtail. We call that swordtails. That genera is the swordtails. And that genera, this species has no sword. It also has no color whatsoever. It's a completely nondescript brown fish that gets about an inch and a bit in size. Now, nobody wanted that fish, and I kept it and I bred it, and almost every monthly meeting for probably 3 years I took that fish to the meeting, and I kept it solely because I absolutely love the scientific species name. I just think it's one of the funniest names to ever be given to a fish, cuccianus. But we should move on. So when that September meeting comes along and my little guys are growing up and doing better and they're looking good, I'm going to go and I'm going to start bagging up. I'm going to bag up 5 of my offspring, and I'm going to take that bag and brag them up properly and take them to the monthly meeting. I'm going to have that monthly meeting. It's going to have my name on it, the name of the species, how many are in the bag, any other further information that it's a Cares fish, anything like that. I put all that information on the bag. Now, if I've done everything properly on my point, the following month, I'm going to get presented with a beautiful certificate. And these are the certificates that we get for breeding certain fish. I mean, you know, some of these are Ilosoma, which is one of the little pygmy sunfish from Florida, and Dokincia similis. This is one of those southern Indian species of big barb. But those are all either C's or B's or whatnot. But this is a class D. We get the fancy gold seals. That's a cool little touch. The little Wesley Eye cichlid named after our good buddy, Mr. Rusty Wessel. That's a D class because it just is. And what's even cooler is our club is a part of a much larger club. Now, if you're in the States and you're a part of a club in Texas, you're a part of a club in Ohio, it doesn't matter. Your club can also join the Federation of Aquarium Societies. I think it's called FOS, and I'm pretty sure it's still around. I got a FOS medal over there on my wall. That little one sitting underneath the fish carving, that's my FOS medal. And I can't remember what I won it for, but I probably won it in like the 80s or something. But we're also in Canada. We have a big organization called KOAC, Canadian Association of Aquarium Clubs. And KOAC is pretty much centered around the Toronto area, and there's probably 15 to 20 clubs in that area. And there's a lot of really hardcore, awesome people in that area. But KOAC, all the clubs across Canada can be members of KOAC, and there's all sorts of benefits. One of the benefits being is that we get to participate in their Breeders' Award programs as well. And their Breeders' Award programs are vastly different than anything that we have on the local level. Instead of them being just reapplying for the same awards from the same fish and getting a classification and all that stuff, they don't do it that way. The KOAC awards are actually kind of grouped awards. So if you want to specialize in just killies, they have killifish awards, and you can start with killies and killies and killies, and there's maybe 3 or 4 plateaus, and you get nice, beautiful certificates for those as well. And then there's a general one, and then there's a live bearer one, and I think there's a Riff Lake cichlid one, and there's several different awards that you can apply for. And those are really, really cool, because my whole thing of being a part of a club, if I'm involved in any sort of capacity on an executive level, my thing is always to give back as much as you possibly can to your membership. I don't care what it is. You hand somebody a certificate, or you hand out ribbons for participation, you hand out ribbons for doing things like participating in a bull show, you get kids fired up about the hobby, you hand out free coffee at the meeting. I don't care what it is, whatever you got to do. Get the people there, entertain them, educate them, socialize, because that's the whole reason for joining these things. Start sharing your information, start sharing your knowledge, and let's have some fun. If you've never joined an aquarium society, you have no idea what you're missing. If you've never attended a giant convention or even just a regional convention, you have no idea what you're missing. Get out of your seats, look online, see if you can find a club that's even remotely near to you. If you can't find one, I want to see you put something in the comments and say, hey Biggs, I live in so-and-so and I have no club near me, and I'll do my best to find one that's the closest for you. Okay? That's Biggs's pledge to you. I'll try and help you find a club that's local to you, and I'll probably try and get you in touch with somebody that's there. I don't know all of them definitely, but I've spoken at a lot of clubs all over the world, and I got a lot of awesome friends everywhere I travel, and I love every single buddy, every person I've ever met. I just have such amazing memories, and I always look forward to going back and seeing these people again. But let Biggs help you guys find that out. But getting back to the KOAC thing, the one thing they do is the Canadian Association of KOAC, or of Aquarium Clubs, which is KOAC, they give achievement awards for being the first person in Canada to breed a species. So this one here, Hypsileotris compressa, that is the Empire gudgeon. That's that beautiful species. It's fire engine red. You often see it, I think it's Australia or New Guinea. I don't even remember. But I got awarded for that. Does that necessarily mean that Biggs is the first person ever to breed that fish in Canada? Hell no, it definitely doesn't. There's a lot of people out there. I'll give you an example. Our good friend, Mr. Jim Cummings, legend in the field, legend, master aquatic, master aquarist. He's kept killies, he's kept cichlids most of his life. He's absolutely an absolute aquatic legend. Jim has never once submitted a B.A.P award, a B.A.P form. He's never once done it. Doesn't interest him. He doesn't need the recognition. He breeds fish for himself. And I'm somewhat the same way. I don't need the recognition. I went about 17 years where I wasn't involved with the Aquarium Society due to life changes and whatnot. But I was still keeping fish, and I was still breeding fish. I just couldn't make it to meetings. So I have no credit for any of those fish. Does it matter to me? No. Because it doesn't matter to me. It's all for fun. It's all for sharing. And I've mentioned it in videos before. When I do breed fish, I'm pretty open about getting the fish out there. I transport fish all over the place when I travel. I try and get the fish out there. If I got something really, really rare and cool, I want to get it to as many people as possible so we can ensure that that species stays in captivity, that we have it for generation after generation after generation. Now, in our B.A.P program, getting back to it, we handed out these nice, beautiful plaques, and like little plaques for all the different levels. And I can't remember all the levels. I think there was beginner, intermediate, advanced, senior, and I can't remember. There was a whole bunch of different levels. And as you grew in the levels, you had to have so many points, and you had to have so many fish from certain things. So you could probably get your beginner and maybe your intermediate by just breeding A-class fish, 5-point fish, maybe. But once you get past that, you have to add in some B's and some C's and stuff. Well, in '94, I got my Masters, which is this super cool, gorgeous plaque I got made for, or they made for me. And then in 2000, I got my Grandmasters. Looks like it's on the toilet seat, but it's pretty cool. And, that's hundreds of species of fish. Is that great? Yeah, Biggs, that's great, really, really great. Doesn't mean anything. I've traveled so much that I've seen some people's fish rooms that are just absolutely breathtaking. It's hard to go without mention. There's so many I don't want to name drop, but there's so many I could say that are just so incredible at what they do. So let's acknowledge just a few of them just quickly in here. Anybody that's never seen Mr. Charlie Grimes' fish room, he is absolutely an absolute master at whatever he puts his mind at. Rosario Lacorte, the guy, he pretty much Captain Tetra, the Tetra Whisperer. Like he is one of the best living legends for breeding fish. And get his book. I'll put the book up there. I've talked about it before. Get his book. The stories in that book are invaluable for breeding fish. If you want to talk specific people, look at all the people like Gary Lange. Like Gary Lange, his primary interest is rainbows. And this guy's primary interest in rainbows isn't something he's done for 2 years, 3 years. He's been doing it as long as I've been on the planet. This guy is absolutely a legend for this. And now he goes almost yearly, he goes over to New Guinea, and he's finding new fish all the time. This guy's been doing it forever. Absolute legend in my books. How about Mike Helwig? There's so many of these amazing, amazing breeders that just bring everything to the table. Erica Bodrock, the list goes on and on and on. Regina, there's just many and many and many and many. So I'm not trying to name drop. I'm not trying to do any of that. But I bet you every single club, aquarium society out there, has one or two or a handful of hardcore aquarists. And those guys will probably all admit that having that core group of people in there, they're interested in breeding fish, they all feed off each other. They feed off that energy, that excitement. They share that knowledge. Those species go around and around. And that's all 100% for the betterment of all of us. Now, the real foundation or the premise behind what I wanted to go with this discussion wasn't just about my live bears and stuff like that. You see the light's already gone off because the lights only stay on for 6 hours a day on this planted tank. But the real foundation for this talk was I would love to see down the road, not my organization, not your organizations, just us in general as hobbyists, start viewing these type of programs, instead of this hierarchical system that we have in them, start thinking about it. Okay, I didn't put these species on the planet. If you believe in a deity, a god, that's great. And if they put the species on the planet, didn't they put them on the planet in a way that they should be able to do everything to their capacity in their environment, right? Without any influence of man whatsoever. So a guppy, a convus cichlid, a red ram, an Oscar, an arowana, a stingray, it doesn't matter what it is. Every one of those species on our planet today should replicate to its capacity in its environment. Correct? You guys probably all agree with that, right? Hopefully you do. If you don't, you can put a comment. I'm just going to attack you relentlessly if you do. Nah, I won't. But we'll have some fun with it. But what I'm getting at is I'd love to see where we do a program where all the species, we don't have to break them down, because where's the gray area? If this fish is worth 5 and this one's worth 10, why? Okay, now if you take a 5-point fish, let's say a guppy, you have a 10-gallon tank, plastic plants, SpongeBob ornaments, and a bubbler and stuff like that, you can probably still replicate guppies successfully. You probably all agree with that, right? Maybe even convicts, maybe cribs. There's a few species that'll work with that. Okay? To go to a B, maybe in a B class fish, the fish is either maybe a bit more aggressive. Maybe it takes a little longer to mature. Maybe it needs a bit more specialized food than just flake food. Maybe it needs a little bit of protein influx or something like that. Maybe you got to feed it a bit of frozen or something. I'm not saying we're going crazy and feeding it live, but maybe it just needs something more than just flake food. Maybe it needs specialized shelter or thought process behind. You're not going to just walk in here and go, oh, look what bread, you know? Maybe that's a B. Maybe a C, a 15-point fish, is something that you would need 1 or 2 or 3 of those factors to do that. It's that much more aggressive. It takes that much longer to mature. It definitely needs live food or an addition into its diet of different types of specialized foods. Maybe it gets really, really big, you know, and it needs a lot of things to help you successfully breed it. And then a D class, and I'm just using my program as an example, and it's pretty much based around that. A D class, or the highest level, should be something that is almost uncommonly ever bred in captivity, or you have to have a ton of involvement. This species will not replicate without you altering water chemistry, feeding it specialized diets, you know, whatever, these sort of things. And that's kind of the way I view, and that's my view on how a hierarchical system should work. The only problem being with that type of a system is, where's the line between 5 and 10, and 10 and 15, and 15 and 20? Where's that line? Because there's no way you can generalize it all and say, well, this one's this one for sure, this one's this one for sure, but even in every genre, there's going to be species. Like, we'll use Thrichthyes for an example, the firemouth. The firemouth is an easy one. And Orium is probably the same, and Helleri, it's a little more aggressive. Buculopinus is definitely more aggressive. Passionis gets much bigger, you know what I mean? So even in that one genre, how do you break them down? So if we were to just use as an example, where would we place Mikai? Where would we place Helleri? Where would we place Panchovia? Where would we place Passionis? You know what I'm getting at? So if we could break it down and say, hey, I didn't put these species on the planet. They've evolved this way. Each species is unique. If given its natural environment and its normal things, it'll replicate to its capacity. That's perfect. My job as an aquarist is to figure out how to give it all those little things that it needs, put the pieces of the puzzle together, and it'll reproduce to its capacity in my environment. So if that's true, shouldn't everything be worth 1 point? Or the point's irrelevant to me, and just accumulate. So you don't have to have these super complicated programs. I saw an organization that shared with me their species list, and they were, any single time that something was revised and the name changed, they had to go in and spend all these hours editing and changing it. Why? Why would you bother? None of us, well, I can't say about none of us, I can say about me, and I have a lot of scientific background, but I'm not an ichthyologist. So it doesn't matter. You can keep changing the names. When this book came out, Cullender's revision, I think it was 88. When this book came out, boy, was the cichlid community at ACA, the American Cichlid Association, everybody was just up in arms. You can't change everything, because prior to that, every single cichlid from Central America and a lot of them from South America all fell under the genera Cyclosoma. And then when he redid that book there, I think it was like 11 species became Cyclosoma, with the type species being Bimaculatum, which is the black port cichlid, and everything else was tossed. Everything else went into complete limbo, and honestly, that's 88, I think, 86 or 88, and we're at what, 2019 now? We're still trying to sift through and figure this stuff out. There was one really, really well-known and respected ichthyologist, Dr. Robert Rush Miller. He passed away probably about 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer, and I think he was at the University of Michigan, and he was very strongly influential in taking on that task and figuring it out and putting the pieces to puzzle and giving all our beloved Central American cichlids a home again. And then he passed, and it's like, and then went back into limbo for a long period of time. And now people have started to pick up the slack again, and stuff's been jumping around. I remember back in the day, there was like Vieja, and there was Nandopsis, and then everything became this, and everything became that, and you had to put everything in quotes, and everything had to be pluralized, because Latin is a dead language, so you have to use the grammatical rules of Latin. And most people don't speak Latin anymore, and people that pretend that they do, that don't, they just completely butcher it. So let's just leave that out. Just don't even do it. But now we're starting to put those pieces of the puzzles back again. But does it really matter? You know, if I tell you Mikai, and I keep Central American cichlids, and I tell you it's Mikai, you're probably going to know what it is. Now, there is exceptions to the rules for that, yes. If you're going to name something that's Latin based on a color, bimaculatum, or something like that, that's named after a spot or something, you know, then yeah, there's going to be some options there. There might be 3 or 4 species with that same specific name instead of generic name. You know, that's true. But if you say, well, I keep South American cichlids, and it used to be aquidins, such and such, okay, now I know what it is. Because, you know, like, let's think about that beautiful leaf spawner, Aquidins paraguiensis. Okay? Aquidins paraguiensis. Now it's called Bergikina vittata. It's totally different fish. And that's not new. That's like 80s when that changed. But that is a stunning. But if I call it the comb-tail acara, and I'm not one, you guys probably know that, I'm not one for using a lot of common names, but in that case there, that specific one, I talk about the comb-tail acara, it's not one species. Comb-tail acaras are a lot of species within that grouping of fish, and they all kind of spawn, and a lot of them look very, very similar depending on which region you're getting them from. So trust me, in my lifetime, and in most of yours, there's still going to be new species coming out. There's going to be revisions, and the species are going to change. So let's stop trying to be ichthyologists. Let's have some fun. Let's put the fun back into it. Instead of investing all the time in that, I'd rather you guys sit there at the meeting and socialize and have a cup of coffee and shake some hands and share species around and share war stories about breeding this and breeding that. And let's have some more fun with it. So with that today, hope you guys enjoyed this little Biggs' little rant on breeders award programs. I'd love to hear the discussion from you guys. I'd love to see some comments from you. Let's get the discussion going. And as always, thank you very much, guys. Take care.